Welcome to Seriously, What Could They Be Thinking? The show where the economy isn't just weird, it's aggressively alphabet shaped. We are currently sitting in a K-shaped economy, not a recovery, an economy.
Jamie, I saw this on CNBC this morning and I'd never heard of it before. And so I'm like texting you, this is interesting. But obviously you already know all about this. And apparently you and Josh were talking about it last night. How did this come up in your house?
Well, it came up because of Bon Jovi. I am a huge fan of John Bon Jovi, and yes, shout out to all of those other people who also live on a prayer. But no, he's announced a tour, okay, and it's really exciting. Seven items, 4 in New York City, 3 overseas in the UK, and I immediately just was like, I want to go. We should take the whole family because my kids listen to Bon Jovi because you can play it in the car without worrying about language. We all rock out to John Bon Jovi, and so I was like, we should go. And he's like, do you know how expensive those tickets are going to be? And so that brought up Taylor Swift, and we're going to go to it, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But then it was, oh my gosh, how privileged are we?
Yeah.
Because the rest of the world is having problems. And that's when we ended up getting into our economic discussion, which is not unusual in my particular household.
That's what ours. We break into cybersecurity discussions all the time, so I totally get it. So I just find this fascinating, actually, from a leadership / management perspective, because I love the concept that we still have a portion of our society purchasing, while we have another portion pulling back. And for me, that's just a puzzle. So how do I, as a manager, shift my sales or decrease my prices to attract the consumers that are pulling back and shift my margin up to the consumers that can afford a little bit more? And how do I do that? How can I make it a little bit more enticing where this section of the market will pay? So I'm automatically thinking about like, oh, how can I discount these Pokemon cards to sell those Pokemon? I don't know.
I absolutely. So let's do a little bit of definitions, okay? Yes. So that everybody can understand what we're talking about. So typically when you hear K-shaped, it's typically talked about in a K-shaped recovery. So you're in recession, and a K-shaped recovery is when the more wealthy individuals start really having a better time, and it goes up, and they're really spending more. They're having a strong recovery. Whereas the bottom portion of your economy is really being left behind. So they continue to struggle. They continue to have problems trying to find jobs or something like that. So when we talk about a K-shaped recovery, we're talking about coming out of recession and tech jobs come back and more and better jobs come back, but yet the low wage jobs tend to still, lag behind. That's the recovery. We're not in that situation. What is now being talked about is a K-shaped economy. It's really a very similar thing, but we're really talking about consumer spending. So wealthy individuals, the people who are in the very strong demographics of I make enough money, I have my own home, they are flexing their spending power, and they're spending their money. They're going on vacations. They're buying luxury goods. They're feeling really good because the market is up and things are good that way. The inflation that we were supposed to have isn't hitting nearly as hard as we expected it to. So they're really flexing their buying power, and we're seeing the economy grow because of that spending. At the same time, though, the demographics on the bottom, right? The people who are struggling are really struggling right now because the inflation, while smaller than expected, is still there, and their money is not stretching as far. It's become harder to eat out. It's become harder to do things. I need to cut back in order to make my dollars stretch. It is expensive to buy a car. Those type of things are not, the good times are not trickling all the way down to the lower income individual. So we have a K-shaped economy.
Absolutely. Well, and I think what we're seeing, the basics, food is more expensive. Even grocery store costs are significantly higher. Gas is more expensive. So the stuff that you need to live is getting more expensive. So, and to those on a fixed income, retired folks, those that have just less disposable income, that makes a huge difference when you just have to focus on buying food and getting, fuel to get to work and that kind of thing. So I think it's a super interesting. Something that we should be paying attention to, and especially if you're a business owner, understanding who can afford your products and who can't right now, I think is a really good thing to know.
Yeah, and we see some evidence of that
Mhm.
in the economy with what's going on. Airlines are a really interesting example, right? So they're actually talking about the fact that overall travel spending is kind of down,
Mhm.
but expenses on luxury travel, the first class, the business class flights are growing. Their longer haul flights, their international flights are growing. And so they're actually spending money to really cultivate that various demographic while leaving the other individuals just kind of suffering because, yeah, prices on economy tickets have gone up and it's more expensive to fly. And it really is a rough. And so they, as a result, are pulling back. They're not seeing as
Right.
much demand.
Right. So I think it's interesting. You were telling me that Delta is actually reconfiguring some of its planes to address this luxury travel. Is that right?
Well, so Delta is known as one of the places. So Delta One, those lie flat seats, the
Oh
Emirates and
yeah.
stuff like that, they're the ones who are really well known for that first class luxury items. And people like United are starting to try to attack that dominance by upgrading their system. So it's not Delta, it's the
Is it?
Uniteds and stuff like that, trying to compete with the more luxury long haul providers.
So it's super interesting. I see this as just another temporary phase. I don't see that long term luxury travel will be a thing. That everything is a cycle, right? So I don't I don't understand investing in like the airplane itself. And I've been on plenty of United long haul flights that have lay flat seats and don't, right, or that have basic economy. Uh, but I could see upgrading the amenities and finding ways to make it far more attractive to sit in that area of the plane. But I can't imagine expanding the space, right? Because that to me really decreases your options.
And there's not a ton of people pulling out, like, say, economy seats and putting in business class seats and stuff like that. That's not what's going on. We are potentially growing to more economy plus
Mm,
business class rather than full first class that's there. There is a little bit of a compromise associated with the airlines themselves.
right,
But what's actually happening is we're seeing that that back of the plane is not filling the way it's
right,
supposed to. And that is an issue because there's a lot of money. While those seats are much cheaper than the ones in the front of the plane, they take a lot less space. They take a lot fewer employees and stuff like that. So it
right,
is not necessarily a question mark of, first class is where you make all your money. That's not
right,
necessarily true. There is, and understand that while we're talking about this trend, we're talking about tweaks. We're not talking about an
right.
overhaul, right? This is not millions and millions and millions of dollars going to it. This is the
Rebranding.
tweaks that
Yeah,
they're doing right now as they're figuring out what is their next step as they're
right,
trying to interact with the economy. But it's making real life decisions as a
right.
result.
So when I think about travel, the vast majority of my travel in my life has been business related, and yes, we saved money to travel as family on vacations, but the vast majority of it was business related. And most of the companies I've worked for simply do not pay for first class tickets. It is part of their policy. I completely understand it, unless you have a medical exemption, and that's a whole other bag of worms. But the so I was religious about flying United, and I'm a fan because when I traveled internationally, I had a much significant increase in my chance of getting upgraded. Or sometimes I'd pay my own cash to get upgraded just because so I would show up in a better shape. but so I kind of wonder, is some of this decrease in economy actually companies pulling back? Do we know it's all consumer? Is there something where the Uniteds of the world, could they be working deals for businesses to get more of those economy seats filled, or am I just like trying to solve a problem that isn't solvable?
I actually don't know. And please understand there's more stuff going on right now than
Right.
just this K-shaped economy. So my husband also travels for work quite a bit, and they've actually been talking about and holding off on purchasing tickets because they are unsure of how easy it is to get international folk over here in order to do
Right.
the particular meetings. And then there's the whole question about TSA and the government shutdown going on right now. So unfortunately, the airlines are doing more than just K-shaped economy stuff that is
Right.
interacting with their decisions that are there. But let's go ahead and let's switch topics a little bit. Let's talk about the consumer spending and how that is actually playing out. So in a shift, we're going to go back to Bon Jovi, right?
Yes.
We saw last year a phenomenon, right? For 2 years, the Taylor Swift tour, the Eras tour, generated billions of dollars. The prices to go see Taylor Swift were crazy high.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting phenomenon because it really was showing kind of off the how wealthy the world has gotten to be
Mm-hmm.
able to spend that type of money on it. But at the same time, there was a lot of other good coming from that particular tour. Like there was some statistics. I actually think the Fed did a little bit of a study on it, and that when she would come into town, the entire
The
economy
economy. Yeah.
grow because of
Right.
all of the tourism that happened. So the local restaurateurs, the local hotels, the lower end people were also being brought up by that high end event
Mm-hmm.
with what's going on. But that may be true for these like one-off events, the Taylor Swifts, hopefully the John Bon Jovis someday. But what we're seeing instead is a lot of people exercising their muscles for buying cars,
Mm-hmm.
luxury houses, items like that. That's where that K-shaped economy is really starting to show up. And so we
Mm-hmm.
see individuals still buying high-end homes. There are people like you and me are not moving out of our, let's say, middle end homes that we have because we don't want to get rid of our really low interest rates. So we still have that
Exactly.
kind of hangover drag that's
Mm-hmm.
been going on. And as a result, we don't have, and the lower end people, I'm sorry, the younger you are, the more likely you are to be in that lower bottom part of the
Right.
K, can't break into the housing market, can't break in, they're renting longer because of a combination of the fact that there isn't a lot of supply out there. And
Mm-hmm.
number two, interest rates are high and they're right now waiting for them to come down. Whereas the luxury market, who may be paying more in cash, less in loans, they're still going strong.
I just have to say the fact that you said interest rates are high and they're at 4 something% just cracks me up. I'm sorry, but like I
Here,
get it because I'm sitting on a 2% interest rate for a home,
good.
like 2 point something tiny. So I totally get it, but still, it's like
We're
4%.
not moving. We're
Money's
not
cheap.
moving. Like
Yeah,
there, I could reduce the size of my house by probably a third and
yeah.
pay as much as what I have right now on a per month basis because my interest rate would grow. It,
Exactly. Yeah.
it
There's no point. Yeah, I totally get it. So interestingly enough, the difference between Taylor Swift and John Bon Jovi, as it stands today, is actually, I think, very indicative of the difference between what the economy was and is now. Because John Bon Jovi is not only doing a limited number of uh, events right now, concerts, sorry, the word, but he's also doing them only in New York City, which is insanely expensive to begin with. And somewhere in the UK, London, I assume.
there's three. One in Edinburgh, one in Dublin, one in Wembley. So
Oh, wow.
yeah. So I think okay. Let's because I'm a fan. I got to tell you a little bit about this. Number one, there's supposed to be more tour and dates potentially announced. Number two, I think he's testing it out a little bit because he had surgery back in 2022 on his
Uh,
vocal cords, and this is the kind of reemergence tour. And so I get not wanting to book a huge tour to discover it's too hard on the
right.
vocals. So there's space between each of these dates as well. So I think that's a little, I think they're being a little cautious there.
Yeah.
And thank you. Please take care of yourself, John.
I'm not beating up on John Bon Jovi, by the way.
I
I'm
know
not a
you're not.
huge
I
fan.
know
I
you're
just
not.
think that it's kind of interesting how it's playing out.
It is playing out differently. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so yeah, I am a fan too. It was the second concert I ever saw. I'm not going to tell you the name of the first one because that's how old I am. but so, but I think so if your job is being squeezed right now, like
Yeah.
these are things you're not going to pay for, right?
No,
And
that's exactly right. So these are luxury items.
mhm, agreed, yeah. And I think we're seeing in a lot of cases with the H-1B visa conundrum, we'll call it, being very expensive. It'll be interesting to see if those prices come down. But we have companies that are halting their investment. We saw Walmart is the number 4, in stack rank of the companies that invest in H-1B visas. They've stopped their investment, or at least paused it for now. And because of this $100,000 rule. And then we see so many companies that are just pausing hiring because they don't know what's going to happen with the economy, and they're essentially getting some pretty significant gains out of AI. And so it's not that they're laying people off, but they're just not hiring. So that just
Yeah.
amplifies this divide.
Yeah, if you're exactly right. Because again, younger individuals tend to be on that bottom half already, trying to get that first job. As a college professor, I'm hearing it from my students that it's harder to get the interview, that there's fewer jobs out there than there was 3 years ago, when they first entered college. Now they're graduating. You're exactly right. And it is an interesting scenario as a manager on how to play this, right?
Exactly.
Do you try to take advantage of this type of tighter market to get some better talent? There is a possibility, right? Do you say, no, I don't know where things are going, and so I'm going to go ahead and also be one of those people who hold off, because there isn't a ton of downside to holding off in a temporary basis, especially if I'm getting gains on AI.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I totally agree. So if I were a manager right now and I had the opportunity to find the problem is, how do you define what's good talent in the age of AI? Because I think the ball keeps moving, and there is a lot of manual work that is being outsourced, so how do you grow people? That, I think, will be a whole different episode in itself. But I definitely would be looking at my portfolio and asking, how do I shift my margin around? Because how do I make sure strategically I have a portfolio that gives me that flexibility? That I would be thinking long term about, are there ways that I can very, very quickly adjust how I go to market to take advantage of portions of the sector, or portions of the business that are hiring? Or, as I said, hiring, spending, portions of the consumers or businesses that are spending. I just think it is a lens through which most companies should be looking right now.
Yeah, to be honest, at this point, for the companies, you don't want to cater to the middle class. That middle class is shrinking. We have that whole other conversation that's there, right? But they're the people who are in that neck of the K economy, right? They're having some issues. They could flip up, they could flip down, but more importantly, there's no money there right now. There's no money on the low end.
Yeah.
They're pulling back. The middle part is not really growing. It's right. Where that juncture of the K, and then you've got the growth in the upper level. So that's where the money is right now. It won't necessarily stay that way. And to be honest, the one thing I want to mention, right? The movement on the bottom half is much slower than the movement on the upper half, right? If, let's say, the stock market tanks in the next 2 months, it drops by 20%, we enter into bear territory, the high end area will dry up like that.
Yes, totally agree.
It will change so quickly, right? Whereas the low end, who is struggling right now, is still trying to buy basic food, is still going to continue to buy basic food, basic healthcare, basic those type of things. And so while they are struggling, the downside is not going to be the biggest, and it's not going to move very fast either direction. It's not going to recover very quickly. It's not going to drop very quickly.
So if you are, just before we, last question before we go, if you're Walmart, what do you do right now? Because their whole market is in the group that's pausing, the group that's struggling.
You cut back on orders for Christmas, right? You don't want to fill your place into a point where you need to discount in order to remove items that are there, right? When you're doing the mix associated with trying to decide your Black Friday strategy, it needs to be what I'm going to call affordable luxury if you're trying to sell into the low end, or it needs to be high end, right? It needs to be all the way to the high end. And that's not really Walmart place, although I will go to Walmart to buy my AirPods, right? So I could maybe do some of those type of items, but not necessarily being looking into like that middle ground.
Right.
That's there. And
That's fascinating.
again, it's more about that size of my order at this point. I know they're going to be stretching their dollar. More of their money is going to end up going towards the family Christmas meal, and less of it's going to go under the tree as a result.
Got it. Oh, that's fascinating. They're the ones that I was really wondering, like, what would you do? Because your entire market is going to slow down for just, and we know it'll come back, right? We know it'll come back, but it's going to slow down for a bit. So I
Yeah.
think that's a great strategy. So
Yay!
anything else before we go?
No, I'm so excited. I'm hoping we'll see if in July we take a week off, you'll know why, because I'll be off partying with John Bon Jovi.
That's it. Well, set aside the money now. That's all I have to say. So it's still there in July.
It's going on Monday, so I'll be purchasing them now while time is good.
Very good. And paying those very, very high Ticketmaster prices, which will be a whole podcast episode in itself because I've been monopoly of Ticketmaster.
There we go.
But whether you're off to see Taylor Swift in a private jet or stuck in 37B behind a John Bon Jovi superfan live streaming Bad Medicine, which may be Jamie and her family, just remember that in a K-shaped economy, someone else's upgrade is someone else's turbulence. So until next time, keep your spreadsheets handy and your coffee strong.